Amazing. Well, hi everyone. GM. We are here with another live stream. We are chatting with the projects that make this Epoch with a strong focus on Ethereum, of course. And yeah, it's been a really good few days of chatting with builders and having really good conversations. Today we're here with some really cool projects as well. But before we get into that, let's start with some intros. I'm Michelle. I had marketing at Octant, and you have probably seen me shit posting or retweeting cat videos and gifs. And I take full pride in that because I've got 3 little cats. With that, if you're not familiar with Octant, which you should be, and you should definitely have some locked GLM too, we help grow sustainably. We've got 100,000 ETH that we've staked thanks to Golem Foundation, and the staking rewards go to funding impactful projects in Ethereum. This epoch was a little bit different because it was one of our first Ethereum themed epochs, but in general, we have obviously had a strong Ethereum focus, but this one has been specifically focused on contribution to Ethereum mainnet. We had very clearly defined categories and criteria that we were looking for projects within, and this is an important step towards V2, which really is helping build infra that's going to lead to sustainable growth through DeFi. Lots to come on that, including this week when we're going to be launching some content around vaults and some of the cool things that we're doing in terms of technical innovations and what we're cooking at behind the scenes. But with that, that's me. Let's go over to Nico. Introduce yourself. I feel like a lot of folks already know, but yeah, if you want to introduce yourself again. Wait, Nico, are you still with us? Oh no, I think Nico's having some Wi-Fi glitches and internet issues. So we're going to go over to Cheeky. Introduce yourself. Tell us more about yourself and tell us more about Protocol Guild.
All right. Yeah, sure. Can do. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Michelle. Nico, once you come back, thank you to you. Yeah, great to be here for another round of Octant public goods funding. I'm Cheeky Gorilla. You can call me Cheeky. I'm a contributor to Protocol Guild. What is Protocol Guild? It is very basically a funding mechanism for Ethereum's talented core devs, the men and women who are basically building the future of Ethereum and maintaining it as we know it today. These are the people who, are responsible for upgrades like the merge, I hope you all know about. But also, most recently, we had the Pectra upgrade, which had a slew of amazing upgrades to the protocol. The next upgrade towards the end of this year, the main headliner there is PeerDAS. So basically giving the layer 2s all the scalability they hopefully need for the foreseeable future. These are the kind of things that will basically allow Ethereum to become the world computer, the global settlement layer, whatever the the tagline is for Ethereum. These core protocol upgrades will enable this to happen, to onboard the entire world. And this is really important work. It's work that not everyone can do. The barrier to entry is really high because of the knowledge involved. And so what Protocol Guild does is basically tracks who are these individuals who are actively contributing to this work. And so today we have an on-chain membership registry of just under 200 individuals who are currently actively working on that stuff. And we've basically built a funding mechanism around this list that enables the ecosystem to donate tokens to be vested directly to the core devs. And this is a really cool thing because it essentially allows the core devs to benefit from all the crazy value being created in the ecosystem while still staying focused on their core protocol work. There's been a lot of talk about like accelerating Ethereum's core protocol development roadmap. And like, yes, of course, that's something that we absolutely want to do. But the way that we're not going to do that is by having these core devs churn and going to work for other projects that can like pay them more, for example. And so this is an incentive mechanism for the core devs to make sure that they have a way to participate in the success of the ecosystem and basically ship all the amazing core protocol upgrades that are left over the next, let's call it 4 to 5 years, to basically allow all these projects to have all the success that they need and for Ethereum to, as I said before, be able to onboard the world.
Thank you, Cheeky. That was a really, really great starting point. And fun fact, Protocol Guild has actually been one of our top funded projects since the first Epoch Zero. So I know y'all are our Epoch favorites. I just quickly had a look at the current rankings. Y'all are ranked number 2. Grow the Pie has the number 1 spot right now. But there's still time to allocate. These rankings and numbers can change up until the last second, as we've seen in the last couple of epochs. And so it's always fun to look at the rankings and the metrics. I am going to come back to you with more questions around the guild, and even more conversations around how we can keep Ethereum growing. But thank you for all of the work that you all do and that the guild does. Well, with that, over to Leo. Tell us more about yourself and tell us more about Powder.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Yeah, you're good.
Cool. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Leo, one of the co-founders of Powder Labs, where we mostly build Powder and adjacent technologies. So about myself, I spent before Powder, I spent the last 7 years working at the Ethereum Foundation, where at first I was Solidity core dev, then I was leading the form verification team, and together with a few colleagues from then, we started the Powder project within the Ethereum Foundation, which then became the first spin out in the last years, which was concluded at the end of last year. So we're currently mostly funded by the spin-out grant that we received from the Ethereum Foundation, as well as different grants from different entities such as L2s and zkVMs. And the work we do at Powder is mainly focused on zk tooling and kind of like future technology that will enable different things, including Ethereum protocol improvements as well. And we currently focus on optimizations and security for zkVMs, where the tooling that we build can be used to accelerate different zkVMs. It's not a zkVM in itself, as well as be used to secure and prevent bugs that could lead to funds, loss of funds, and all the things we're used to already. So we're mostly focused on compiler optimization, such as static analysis, and this one new feature that we have since a couple of months called auto precompiles. So I don't know how many people here listening to this are familiar with zkVMs, but one of the struggle points of zkVMs, especially when trying to make zk proofs for Ethereum block verification, is called precompiles, things that are extremely fundamental to make these proofs feasible at all, because that's how you accelerate complex computation in the zk proof, such as for Ethereum, the main things are, for example, Keccak and ICDSA computation or verification. And with this requires a lot of expert manual labor to build these things and secure them. They're very dangerous. And auto precompiles basically scales this to thousands of different precompiles that can be generated and secured automatically without anyone having to build them, read them, and so on. And yeah, we can talk more deeply about these things later, but I think that's it for my intro.
Yeah, it's a great intro, and I have so many questions around zk EVMs, and considering all of our timelines have really been flooded with all of the conversations around switching towards and really just working towards the zk side. So excited to chat about that. In the meantime, I actually want to say GM to Sarah, Jerry, and Gabe. We're seeing your replies. If you're watching this and you do reply, we are going to give you a shout out. So please do keep engaging. And I see a reply here saying, GM, Leo may be aligned, but he proved to be the king of their dragon's den. So this was about yesterday's Dragon Den. I heard that it went really, really well, and it was really fun. So congrats, Leo. All right, over to you. Last but not the least, Louis, tell us more about yourself and tell us more about Shutter Network.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. So I'm Luis. I'm product manager at Brainbot for Shutter Network, and Shutter is an encryption as a service protocol in general, and we apply it to a bunch of things. Among others, it's built into snapshot shielded voting, also hoping to bring it on chain. But now we're focused for this one and the Octant Epoch 8 on the encrypted mempool, where it can kind of prevent or significantly reduce front running and real-time censorship resistance. Let me try to share my screen, because you said we encouraged to do a demo. Does that work? So it is.
I don't know if you can share your screen, but I'm not I'm not sure. Maybe you can share a link with me.
Okay, I just shared. It's in here in the. I can see it down here that it's sharing.
One second.
So I think I would have to.
I think your screen is sharing right now.
Looks good. Yeah, that looks good. Perfect. Jeremy slideshow. So yeah, the high level idea is we can encrypt transactions, and the validator, or if you do it on a 2 sequencer, needs to commit to including transactions and their order while still encrypted. So we only decrypt afterwards, and that way we can eliminate atomic front running and real-time censorship. And it's live on Gnosis Chain, which is a very Ethereum-like chain. They want to follow as closely as possible. Started out with the Nethermind client being able to accept these encryption transactions, and then Aragon 3 already has this already in there. It just needs to be released. And the next step is really bringing it to Ethereum L1, and that's what we are targeting with this grant as well. And we outlined this roadmap on how to bring it to Ethereum L1. There is kind of this longer term, it needs to be in the protocol, but the shorter term is we want to build it together with PrimeAv into their MEV commit infrastructure to be able to incorporate it into PBS. Just I only have very, very short time, right? But essentially, the longer term game is this combining ePBS, Fossil, and encrypted mempools. We think the best the best censorship transaction is censorship transaction is one that is encrypted and forced in via the Fossil inclusion list. Yeah, and then we just want to do this demo. So just to show it's live already, right? It's not just theory. On the left here, I have my normal Claude, and just asking it about my wallet, my balances, right? And on the right, I see this Shutter Explorer where you see the transactions coming in, and then there are these shutterized slots at which the validators are accepting encryption transactions. On the left, I'm saying, please send pointer 1xDI to that address using Shutter's encrypted mempool, and then it detects what I want to do from the natural language prompt, and it is sent and triggers kind of via my little MCP server. And then on the right, you can see it actually arrives, and you can see it in the Explorer first as submitted, pending, and then it is ultimately actually being sort of included and shielded and decrypted, and then executed. One more thing, that's because just leverage the time here. We also built this Ethereum time capsule, which you can put any story or image into it that connects you or anything to Ethereum's 10-year history. So we have the Ethereum 10-year anniversary coming up. Lock something in, and then it is threshold encrypted, and it'll unlock in exactly 1 year. And the proceeds go to Protocol Guild, which is a cool coincidence that we're here together. So that's it.
Thank you. That was great, and that was loved the demo. I know that was really, really great, and especially for everyone that's watching. We're at 188 people watching right now, so that's cool.
Awesome.
We do love our Octant community. So going back to and this one's for you, Cheeky. You know, we've seen a lot of changes coming up. When it comes to Ethereum, the Ethereum Foundation, I am so bullish on a lot of the new hires that are coming up and seeing everybody posting. I think, if anything, sentiment couldn't be higher, which is incredible. And I feel like a lot of feedback has been taken seriously from the leadership side, and we're seeing those in effect. What are your thoughts on some of the changes that are coming up? And is there anything from the Protocol Guild side that you want to share, or anything that's significant that is coming up as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's been really cool to see the all the changes happening at the EF of late. It really seems like they've kind of stepped into a higher gear and are now, hell bent on the grand success of Ethereum, as we would all like it to have. Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's probably worth clarifying, because most people are surprised when I tell them that Protocol Guild is completely separate from the EF. Like, I think for the most part, people may mistakenly believe that it's the EF that either controls or pays for all Ethereum core protocol development. And while it's true that the EF does have a whole bunch of researchers like Justin Drake who are thinking about the future of Ethereum, they do have they've incubated a client team like the Geth team, one of the main clients on Ethereum. But there are a whole bunch of clients in Ethereum. I think you had the trivia yesterday where the answer was that there's 12 clients in Ethereum, consensus and execution layer. And so there are a lot of participants in the core protocol development process outside of just the Ethereum Foundation. And so this is crucial to understand. So when we talk about all these changes to Ethereum, when we talk about all the changes to the EF, it's not like Ethereum itself as a core protocol is pivoting in any kind of direction either. It's been great to see all the changes at the EF, but core protocol development is chugging along as it has been, I would say. In terms of how does it impact Protocol Guild? I think one of the things for us is we Protocol Guild as a funding mechanism needs to ensure that it is working for the ecosystem, right? So basically, the only way that Protocol Guild is going to be successful is if we can convince the ecosystem to basically donate tokens to this mechanism to vest to the core devs. And obviously, we're very thankful for Lewis and the whole team at Shutter for being a leader in this regard. But to that extent, Protocol Guild basically needs to be structured in such a way that the ecosystem truly believes that Protocol Guild is a great way to basically incentivize these core devs. And I mentioned at the start that we have a list of up to 200 individuals right now. That list could be a little bit longer if we immediately included everyone who's working on, for example, Beam Chain, right? This is the big snarkification upgrade for the consensus layer. But Protocol Guild kind of has to move slowly with these kind of things. We have this eligibility framework that currently is focused on admitting Ethereum clients that are basically live on mainnet, and the Beam chain is not live today. So we need to figure out basically how do we expand our eligibility framework in a way that doesn't open us up to capture, because there are a lot of people who would love to be part of Protocol Guild, and we want to make sure that it really is the active core protocol contributors as we basically have defined in our eligibility framework. And so, with the whole snarkification arc of Ethereum, there's actually a lot of work that Protocol Guild has to do to restructure our eligibility framework. And some of this has already started. So if you go to our GitHub, you can see that some of the PRs that we've merged recently are from Trent Van Epps, who is another core contributor to Protocol Guild. He's basically the guy that came up with the idea for Protocol Guild. Basically doing a preliminary restructuring of Protocol Guild's eligibility framework to start accounting for different working groups in Ethereum's core protocol development, which could eventually also include snarkification. So yeah, there's a lot of work that we need to do there. It's not like a restructuring of Protocol Guild, but it is a kind of a reclassification of the eligible work that could make you a Protocol Guild member. So yeah, I guess hopefully that's that answer your question. Directly speaking, the changes at the EF, we love to see them. It doesn't impact us at all. We are very much an independent entity from the EF. But the changes that you see at the EF are in part because of a specific focus on parts of the roadmap, for example, snarkification. And these kind of things, yes, Protocol Guild is also kind of aware of and trying to incorporate into the way that Protocol Guild operates.
Absolutely. And thank you for clarifying that, because I do think that is a big misconception that people have, is that the EF actually, that either Protocol Guild is a part of the EF, or that they're, it's just yeah, there's a lot of dynamics that I think people really confuse, and we see that on the timeline quite a bit too. So that's a really good explanation. For those for those in our community who may not be aware, what is the impact of the I'm sorry, you need to repeat snarkification. Okay. I'm like blanking.
Yeah.
I can't say this word properly. I lost it. Just
to be fair, like I'm pretty sure it's a word that we made up. Like I don't think it's in the dictionary.
But tell us more about how that impacts Ethereum as a whole. And I think one thing that you mentioned as well earlier, right, which was we need funding to have the best talent to keep Ethereum growing. I think that's the part that people don't realize. They see these big taglines and assume that all of this funding has somehow gone to like one blanket entity instead of realizing how many people there are in the guild and how many teams and individual contributors there are. So tell us more about that. Like, how can we keep the best talent going, and what can people also do from a community perspective? Octant being one of them, and allocating here. But yeah, tell us more about that and what folks can do in the community to support the guild.
Yes. Okay. A lot to unpack in that question. I guess there's like 3 different items there, and I'm probably going to forget the last one by the time I've answered everything, or rather the first 2. So first of all, snarkification. What is snarkification? Now, I wish I could like put on my Justin Drake hat and like explain it the way that he explains it, but I cannot. However, I will try to give you my best layman-friendly explanation of snarkification. And snarkification is essentially Ethereum's answer to becoming the economic layer for the internet. Like, what's required for that is scale that's orders of magnitude higher than what we have today. Like, there are some people out there who think that like ossification is a fantastic thing, and I agree with a lot of that. However, I think there's very, very few people out there who would say that Ethereum as it is today is ready to ossify, right? It's not done yet. There's still some work to do. And so basically, how do we get to that end game to give us the scale, the prerequisite scale that we need to like onboard the world? The clearest answer that we have right now is snarkification. And so snarkification, made up word, it's essentially leveraging the magic of these ZK proofs, zero knowledge proofs, to allow Ethereum to have gargantuan blocks on mainnet that can still very, very easily be verified by the the node that you hopefully run from home, or even on your smartwatch, right? So ZK proofs essentially allow you to create a proof that like something happened, in this case that like you've executed this gargantuan block full of transactions, and prove that they are all valid, and the result of that is a ZK proof that is then very easy to like verify that it's correct, that it's not made up, that everything executes the way that's meant to do. And so by leveraging these ZK proofs, as I said, we can literally get like smartwatches involved in validating the state of the network, and that's really incredible, because obviously this means that we can scale our block sizes, which means like more transaction capacity, lower transaction fees, all that good stuff, specifically on Ethereum mainnet. And a lot of this was so-called moon math a few years ago, and the state at which this research has been accelerating was beyond our wildest dreams, except for maybe Justin Drake. He always knew it was coming, and it was coming quickly, but we always were like, no, Justin, you're too bearish on the timelines. Turns out he was just about right on the timelines. But there is still a lot of work left. It is still very much in the research phase. However, there is a lot of implementation work on these like ZK clients, let's call them. So yeah, the one of the things about snarkification as well is that this really is potentially the end game for Ethereum, meaning putting it into maintenance mode. So basically, like once we snarkified the chain, we don't need to do these massive upgrades anymore, right? Does this mean that like all the core devs retire? Probably not. No, like there's always like some maintenance that needs to be done. Just look at Bitcoin. But in terms of like these big merge level upgrades, snarkification truly presents the opportunity to be like kind of like a one and done thing, and then like it's good, right? From then on, we just need maintenance. And this is a very exciting thing, because ossification is important. Being able to give the world assurances that like this thing is not going to deviate, like the protocol is not going to deviate from what you expect from it today, is an important guarantee that we have to offer. So yeah, snarkification is essentially the ultimate scaling solution. I mean, when can we see it hit mainnet? I'm not even going to give you a date because like there is no date. No one knows. It's going to be kind of like done in an incremental way. Maybe the existing clients that we have today, they're going to be like in tandem, like executing all the transactions in a block as they do today, while also like working with provers to verify some of these ZK proofs. Like there's a few ways that this can happen. In fact, if you look at the Ethereum Foundation blog, there's a post from Sophia Gold that was published maybe yesterday, maybe in the last few days, where she goes over kind of what she is working on, how she sees this kind of rolling out in the, let's call it medium to long term. So yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces here, but yeah, the ultimate scaling solution, let's maybe cap it at that. In terms of, I think the second part of your question was like, how can we rally the community behind this? I think in many ways, or actually no, but that was the third question. The second question was like about all the entities who are involved in all of this, right? So yeah, we have the EF, who has some researchers, has a client team, but there's like at least how many are there? There's like 30 different projects from like, let's call it maybe 15 different independent organizations. So you may have heard of like the Prism client team. They were acquired by Off-Chain Labs, who you might know better as the people behind the Arbitrum Layer 2. So they're kind of like part of Ethereum's core protocol development now. We have the Lighthouse client that is run by the Sigma Prime, an Australian team, and like they make money via like doing security work, consulting work, and there's a few other client teams like Aragon and Nethermind that also do a lot of consulting work, which basically helps pay for the core protocol development. And of course, we have like some of the biggest VCs in the space, including Consensus and Paradigm, who also have client teams, who also have research groups who are helping to accelerate Ethereum's core protocol development. Like there's a lot of different stakeholders in this work, and they all have kind of a vested interest in the success of Ethereum. And that's why they want to be part of like constructing the core protocol. And like, to be very clear, like this is only possible on Ethereum because of this multi-client philosophy. Like there is no other blockchain out there that embraces the multi-client philosophy in the same way that Ethereum has. And this is one of our superpowers, right? This is why Ethereum will be able to stand the test of time, because we have such amazing client diversity, which means that one bug in one client will never take us down, which, God forbid, could happen in other blockchains. So yeah, there's a lot of different stakeholders in Ethereum's core protocol development. And so when it comes to like, how do you fund this work? It's really, really hard to do this until Protocol Guild came along, right? So obviously, where my bias is, but I'll continue along that tangent. So Protocol Guild for the first time basically surfaced the individuals who are doing this work, because I mentioned, we have the EF, we have different like corporate companies that have that hire core devs to like build clients, to research, do whatever. And like, it's important that they are able to continue doing that, right? But if you give money to one of these I guess the projects behind the team, one of these client teams, you're not 100% sure if that funding is going directly to the individuals who are doing the work that you want to support, right? It might go to some other important stuff like HR or whatever else that are needed to like run a functioning business. Protocol Guild is different because we are centered around individuals and not teams. So everything that you donate goes directly to these individuals. And like today, because our fundraising, Protocol Guild's fundraising is like, we've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. It's worth less now because of prices have gone down, though I guess they're going back up recently. But with 200 people, funds are vesting over 4 years. It means that the financial incentives today of Protocol Guild are not enough to basically replace a full-time salary. And by that, I specifically mean to compete with the kind of job offers that they're getting in the space. Like they frequently get like high 6-figure, if not low 7-figure job offers elsewhere in the space that obviously they are not being paid working on Ethereum's core protocol. And Protocol Guild is trying to bridge that incentive gap a little bit. And so how we can basically rally the community around this, which brings us to your third question, if I haven't missed anything, is by hopefully embracing this norm that we call the Protocol Guild Pledge, right? And this is basically a commitment that projects can take to donate a percentage of their token supply. We encourage 1%, that basically goes into our funding mechanism to vest to the core devs. And we've seen some amazing projects in the space, some of the biggest projects in the space take the pledge. Eigenlayer, Puffer, Tycho, EtherFi, some other ones that I've now forgotten, apologies. But basically the Protocol Guild Pledge is, we believe, the way that we can scale Protocol Guilds funding to the extent that the funding can be large enough for these core protocol contributors to depend on Protocol Guild as their sole source of income if they would like to, thus enabling Protocol Guild to be a funder of last resort if all of the other entities disappear, right? And so this would be a beautiful thing. It's not something that we can happen unilaterally, like just via proactive fundraising, like me doing this live stream with you all today. It's something that we need buy-in from the community. And so, like, if you know a project that's planning a token launch, and they, consider themselves, they have a dependency on Ethereum, which if they're building on Ethereum, then they definitely do. If you could encourage them to take the pledge, that would be an amazing help for us, because again, it's the Protocol Guild operations team is myself, Trent Van Epps, and Peter Vecchiarelli. And there's only so many projects we can talk to in a given day. There's only so much proactive fundraising we can do. So we are trying to establish the social norm so that basically the funding goes on autopilot, and we have this beautiful flywheel where we have this sustainable and robust funding stream for Ethereum's core protocol work that is going to the core protocol developers themselves, that is funded by the projects who are built on Ethereum. And so this will be a beautiful, beautiful thing to happen. It's definitely not guaranteed that it will happen, but if there's any ecosystem where it could happen, it is Ethereum. And so that's how the ecosystem could help. And so, yeah, I think I've monopolized so much time with that long answer, but I think I touched on all your points, and maybe now the live stream.
You absolutely did, and not at all. We're gonna speak to Leo, and we're gonna get to Lewis as well. And I have a bunch of questions for every single one of you. So. Thank you, Cheeky. That was great. And we're gonna link the blog post that he mentioned from Sophia. Right, it was published a couple days ago, but a lot there in terms of what's coming up, and a lot on the Protocol Guild front as well. But going over to the ZK side, right, like that's been dominating the conversation on the timelines over the last couple of days, and I've just been seeing congrats and shout out to the Boundless team on launching Signal. Like that's been really cool to see so many ecosystem players come together and to support that too. But Leo, tell us more. You mentioned when you were doing your intro, you mentioned ZK tooling, and that's some of what your team is working on. Tell us more about that. What are y'all building? What's being used, and what's coming up for your team?
Yeah, so thanks, Cheeky, for doing a lot of my pitch. I'm ready now to just propose a solution. So the ZK enshrinement for Ethereum L1 is definitely a super exciting path that I think is getting more and more established. Lots of people are already working on this, from research, how to integrate ZK in the protocol, to the ZK provers themselves and ZK VMs, and basically what we do with smart contracts, what we do with the validators. So all of this needs a lot of research and development. And this is a timeline that will likely take a couple of years at least, to decide on what has to be built, to actually build them, to put them in a hard fork. We know how long these things take. So this is likely going to take a couple of years. And in the meantime, there's a lot of work to do. And the stack is pretty tall. So there's work to be done in ZK provers on the protocol side. And in the middle, you have the ZK VMs, which currently is what's used. They're the glue that kind of lets the protocol experiment and prototype with making ZK proofs for a beam chain, for example. And we still need a couple orders of magnitude improvements in proving performance overall. Doesn't mean that we have to take an existing prover and say, okay, this prover has to be 100x faster. So that's not what I mean by we need orders of magnitude. We need overall orders of magnitude. And there are different places we can try to get this improvement from. And this can be a little bit on the ZK proofer side. This can be on the protocol by deciding how we want to make these proofs and how do we want to verify these proofs. So for example, one of the current bottlenecks that ZKL2s, for example, and other teams face when making the ZK proofs is that they want their proofs to be verified on-chain in Ethereum L1. So this requires the proof to have a certain shape. It can only be verified with a certain ZK proof protocol and requires what we call proof wrapping with a GROS16 or a flunk proof. And this is actually pretty heavy. This is way heavier than different ways you can make ZK proofs for, let's say, Rust programs or smart contracts or Ethereum block verification. So another solution, another way you could attack this problem is, well, what exactly do we have to prove and how do we want to verify them? So there are different trade-offs you can make by saying we don't need the prover to be that fast, or we do need to be fast, but the verifier can now be a little bit slower, doesn't have to be as fast as it would be if you had an on-chain proof. And in the middle, there's more tooling involved. So for example, with Powder right now, we see in our collaboration with OpenVM, which is one of these ZK VMs that can make proofs for Ethereum block verification, when we add the Powder compiler middleware to OpenVM, in some benchmarks, for example, Keccak, we see an improvement of 13x in proof generation time over the software version. So this is already faster than what the manual precompiler can provide. So what we see now is this pivoting point where compilers are better than humans at doing things, which is something we've seen before, decades ago, where people do still write inline assembly code when writing C++ and Rust and so on, but it's minimal nowadays, and it used to be very common. And it's kind of the same thing. So we do still have a lot of low-level code being written for ZK VMs and ZK VMs and guest programs to try to make these things faster. But ultimately, the best way to make these things faster is by having automated algorithms that can do these things automatically. So this just scales in a way that is just not possible if you're requiring humans to write in this code. So the effort that it would take for a human to write a ZK VM, to write ZK circuits, for people to audit these things, they're extremely complicated pieces of tech. So you're looking into a timeline that would take 1 or 2 years, for example, to launch a production ZK VM or less. But suddenly, things that would take 1 month, like specific modules that would take 1 month to build and audit, now they can be done in a couple of days because the coding itself is already done and it can be automatically formally verified and so on. Of course, this will have to do some manual verification and some manual auditing, but the whole process is scaled down by, I wouldn't even know how to say how many orders of magnitude, because it's not only about the performance of the result, it's also about the productivity that you get when you're a developer of this tooling. So at Powder now, we're focusing on these compiler optimizations and compiler tooling, which is one of the topics that is extremely underdeveloped in the ZK VM ecosystem. I assume it's because a lot of these teams come from the cryptography side, and they try to optimize a lot of the provers, a lot of the ZK protocols and everything, and just use a vanilla toolchain stack from Rust, for example, or C++ and so on, and don't really notice all the opportunities that exist until you get down to the prover, which is what we do now, and we do see a lot of low-hanging fruits as well as more complex optimizations that we can make to accelerate these ZK VMs. And of course, one of our goals is to support Ethereum on that. One of our main benchmarks is Ethereum block verification. For different ZK VMs, we have collaborations and partnerships with different ZK VMs where everyone is, again, interested in accelerating code that has not been accelerated yet, including for Ethereum. And in some internal experiments, we already see at least a 2x improvement in proof generation time for Ethereum over the state of the art. So this is not like an artificial experiment where we're vaguely assuming what's used. So this is taking an Ethereum block verifier that's used nowadays to make proofs for Ethereum with all the precompiles that already exist. We plug Powder on top of it, and we automatically get a 2x improvement in proof generation. So this is already a very strong result of the current tooling, and this will only go up. right? So the improvements will continue coming. We'll integrate with more ZK VMs, and this is also the kind of like the other developer productivity scaling point of such tooling, because since this is compiler tooling and it's not associated with a specific proof system or specific technique, we can actually apply this in a way that works for any ZK VM pretty much, including the production ones and the new ones. With some level of glue code integration, this can actually propagate to any ZK VM, as well as the compiler front-end work that we do. For example, a lot of the ZK VMs, they actually use RISC-V with Rust to make ZK proofs for Rust programs. But we also have a WASM pipeline that actually enables different things. So it can more easily make proofs for Go programs as well as C programs, which also have Ethereum clients written in. So if you take EVM1, for example, it's the fastest native Ethereum interpreter. It's written in C++/C, but of course also Geth. So most ZK VMs currently do use Reth, or a version of Reth, or pieces of Reth, to make ZK proofs for Ethereum, because it's Rust and the tooling is optimized for Rust. But it's also important for us to get ZK proofs for Geth, or for the code that Geth runs, because it's actually likely the most stable one that has been there for a while, and to also ensure the diversity, or the client diversity, in the ZK world as well. Because currently, as Chiki also said, we have 12 clients running as Fusion consensus clients, but if we all then converge to a single client, when having ZK clients, then all of this goes away. So it's also important to have some diversity in the ZK stack as well, so that we don't end up with one front-end language, one ZK client, one ZK proof system, and so on. And this is where, again, Powders is positioned in the middle of this whole stack, where it's able to apply compiler tech coming from WASM, from RISC-V, from Rust, different programming languages, and kind of like do some sort of LLVM style synchronization of all the front ends, do a lot of optimizations that are focused on ZK and have shown already how many times proof performance improvement we can get, and actually propagate this to all the ZK clients and all the ZK VMs. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. If you have any follow-up questions.
It does, yeah. And one highlight that I remember from the descriptions that your team had shared was that Powder's auto precompiled achieved like a 13 times higher speed up in ZK based on the OpenVM integration benchmarks, which was really, really impressive. But going back to a little bit more, I'd say like taking it back to like a more basic level, what does it take for a project to transition to becoming a ZK EVM? And have you started seeing a lot more interest from different projects as well, based off of conversations, just sort of seeing how the whole roadmap is changing up for the industry? Like, have you seen more of that interest, and are you seeing more teams now transition?
Yeah, I think the optimistic rollouts do have an interest in ZK as well. I think it makes a lot of sense, right? So when optimistic rollups launched, ZK was still kind of a dream, right? And it made sense. But now that ZK tech is quite mature, and as ETH proofs, which is an initiative from the EF to prove Ethereum main blocks with current ZK VMs, as they show, it is already cheap enough, let's say, to run ZK proofs of complex things like Ethereum block verification. So I would guess we can actually expect to soon start seeing ZK fraud proofs for L2s, because it's just a lot easier to make these proofs now, either by running them yourself or using different proven networks that already exist and are in production. Yeah, so this is more related to the L2 side, I guess, but you can already see that a lot of like L2 or Alt L1s or DA style networks, they already use ZK proofs for their own things, because it's just a lot easier currently than developing a whole protocol yourself. You can actually simplify a lot of the design just by relying on ZK proofs. And before, this was difficult because the tooling wasn't there, the provers weren't there, and you had to write circuits yourself. It was a lot of manual work. But now with ZK VMs and the performance they already have, which again has to be improved for Ethereum itself, but if not for Ethereum, it already has good enough performance for a lot of real world use cases. So with the current KVMs, it's already possible for a lot of people that didn't want to write circuits and still don't want to write circuits to just write Rust code, for example, or C code, and you reuse libraries from the crypto community and basically make proofs for their own use cases. And you can think of L2s, L1s, DA, decentralized exchanges, order books, all these kind of things, which would rely then on ZK coprocessors. And yeah, so I think the use cases are only going to multiply.
I agree. I think they are going to multiply, and it feels like the inevitable path as well. Ethereum is for everybody. Of course, we're ETH maxis here over at Octant, but seeing a lot of other Alt-L1s actually lean over towards becoming more of ZKL2s has been interesting, and it's been cool to see from a distance as well. All right, Lewis, over to you. Thank you for that demo. That was actually really, really great. And you showed a little bit around the fact that, like, obviously, like, encrypted mempools are alive, and there's this whole interactive side to it as well. Tell us what it took to get to this point, and tell us more about the roadmap in terms of what's coming up, what you're really excited about. And yeah, I think that's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it started all with it started actually from our scalability research originally. So there's this idea that embedding this type of DKG threshold encryption cryptography primitive into a protocol could enable a more centralized sequencer, right? And detrust the sequencer, because then if the sequencer or validator processes encryption transactions, the censorship becomes a lot harder. Front running becomes a lot harder. So the idea back then was actually this is how one could scale, in that you can then have a more longer term centralized sequencer, for example, as a rollup. Funny thing was, in between, people didn't care, right? They just launched centralized sequences anyway, without thinking about censorship resistance or more front running. So that's kind of the status quo where we're now, right? Where you have those centralized intermediaries being able to censor and being able to front run, and usually we trust that they don't. So you just hope that an optimism team, they run the sequencer, that they don't front run you or they don't censor, which works well for these bigger rollups because they have a stake, right, in their community. But in the longer term, and also on Ethereum 1 for validators, that's not really we don't think it's sustainable, because that's the whole point of a blockchain, right? You don't want to trust a centralized intermediary, and blockchains they solved this transaction ordering problem, and solved in some ways also then sort of transaction ordering, and also longer term, let's say, censorship resistance, but only on these longer time scales, and people are increasingly looking for shorter time scales and have more high frequency trading, and on those time scales we didn't solve it, right? So that's when kind of that scalability topic merged into the MEV topic, where we saw kind of rampant MEV, the introduction of flashbots and PBS. I mean, there's two viewpoints on this, right? Viewpoint one is it made it more fair and more the PBS decentralizes and separates these roles, so hopefully mitigates kind of proposal monopoly and helps with this. But the other side of it is also just adding that infrastructure. Also, we just saw after that all this happening, flashbots and PBS, that's when MEV started, right? Because then people had if you democratize MEV, you also make it invite people to do it, right? So that was but yeah, and I think now we're at a point where I think we can sort of bring all this together in some ways, and sort of the way we see this is really combining the type of encrypted mempool and preventing front running and preventing real-time censorship resistance, while you'd still allow for sort of back running type of MEV, and use something like flashbots, or use something like auction type mechanisms to make extraction fair as well, but only of hopefully only of kind of backrunning type MEVs such as arbitrage and liquidation. So that's kind of the higher level, and then yeah, the journey we took is we implemented it for Gnosis Chain. We also implemented it as an OP geth kind of fork. So any optimism rollup wishing to implement this can do so. And we have a separate we launched a separate testnet for that. But yeah, now the next step is really kind of as I briefly alluded to in the intro, that kind of the next step would be integrating into the PBS transaction supply chain via proposer and builder commitments. So you would receive a commitment, such as maybe other projects are proposing to use these for pre-confirmations, right? That you can get a faster transaction in. You could then, via the same type of infrastructure, you could receive a commitment from a builder and proposer to include an encrypted transaction, and then have it implemented this way, basically. And then longer term, the goal would be really to have it be an in protocol level change. And then again, I try to outline that we think it works extremely well together with EPBS and Fossil. And in fact, Mark from Nethermind has coined this the holy trinity of censorship resistance. So if you combine these three primitives and you don't need relays, because you have EPBS and you have Fossil, the inclusion list to force transaction through, and you have the encrypted mempool or the encryption kind of path there to also make sure that no one sees what's in the transactions while the order is kind of finalized. Then you have this really high level of censorship resistance. We think that's a little bit what it's about, right? The public blockchain, you don't need a public blockchain if you don't need censorship resistance, right? So then might as well use a centralized exchange. So we think leveling it up could really add kind of step up the game for Ethereum and make its value proposition better, right? Also sort of like towards real users, or like mainstream and serious institutional interest. Also for regulatory topics, right? So institutional investors or traders or banks, for example, are just scared of this front running topic or MEV topic. They don't even want to interact with DeFi because they know. I mean, for them it's vague, right? For them it's like mixes in with other sort of exploits or scams or Ponzi, but like that's part of the scariness of DeFi, right? It's like this: oh, you get front run, you get scammed, you get at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we're seeing more institutions come in, ZK definitely has a very compelling case for a lot of the adoption side. And I think we're going to see a lot more work, even on the policy side, as we see a lot more developments on the roadmap. We are coming towards the last part of this stream, so I do want to thank everyone who's been watching. We're at 389 people right now, so that's really cool. We love seeing all of the engagement and all of the replies and messages that do come in later. Let's start with you, Lewis, first, and we're going to go over to you, Leo. What are you most excited about? What keeps you bullish in terms of what you're working on? And if there's anything else you want to share with our community before we do wrap up.
For I guess two split, yeah. So I think the potential for Ethereum really, and kind of what makes me excited about this current. You asked this question before this question about changes in Ethereum and how it can, like, how we have new sort of energy right now. I think that's connected to also to these like institutional things happening, like BlackRock or something like Joe Lubin sort of coming back and doing these ETH strategy type of things. So if we can combine this kind of enterprise focus, real world focus with the necessary changes on the protocol level, be it like ZK kind of scalability, or be it, I think, privacy is, to me, privacy is the last remaining obstacle, because arguably for you could already today use Ethereum for, let's say, higher value transactions or certain, like a lot of use cases, but you can't because it's not private, right? So I feel like privacy is the last remaining big obstacles, and I'm in general optimistic and hopeful that we can solve it, and that there's cryptography sort of coming up that can solve that problem. And if we can connect that to this, making it then attractive and viable for mainstream and real world institutional usage, I think that's really powerful. And then personally, like for Shutter, I think this integration in PBS, and building the POC there together with PrimeApp as well, for MEV commit, I think that's a really like tangible next step to where we can show how this works. And then another one, I think for a lot of these projects where it's a little harder to use, or complex cryptography, or complex things that a normal user is hard for them to grasp or directly use. What I showed, the use of MCP, right, or use of like Gen AI and your personal assistant that translates between the user and those more complex things. I think that's a huge unlock for the entire ecosystem. So making turning normal users into power users that can directly interact with the chain and do complex stuff like complex cryptography things, or craft transactions fully themselves without needing to go through like intermediaries and front ends. So that actually, it sounds like MCP and AI adds a new sort of intermediary, but in some ways it also has the potential to remove a lot of intermediaries if you then make normal users power users, and they directly they can become MEV solvers, for example, themselves. Shout out to Propeller Heads. They're building this solver MCP, so then any user can then themselves become an MEV solver, right? Which is very exciting to me. Like,
It absolutely is, and 100%. I think if there's one thing that we've seen clearly, it's that institutions do trust Ethereum, and that we are going to see a bigger shift, more trust, bigger names, and our timeline is just one glimpse of it. There's so much more that's going on behind the scenes that keeps a lot of us bullish. And speaking of being privacy first, and this is really just anyone who's watching, the Roman Storm case is still going on. Thanks to Golem Foundation for a 50 ETH donation to the case and the trial, but there still is quite a significant chunk of amount that is left and is needed. So whatever the amount is, I think even if it's as low as like $100, like I think every amount counts, and no amount is like, again, I think, and especially when it comes to donations, like put your money where your mouth is. Obviously Octant is one great way to do that, but I just think on an individual level too, no amount is too small, or too big, I would say. So whatever we can do to keep the conversation going in such an important monumental case, I think we can all do a lot more in terms of moving the needle forward and walking the walk on that. And just thought I would like plug that in because there are still
the EF is also matching donations. So like a small donation is matched by the EF. So like it's a larger donation than you think. So yeah, great shout, Michelle, to highlight that. Please do donate. This is like, even if you've never used Tornado Cash before, this case is of critical importance to the entire ecosystem. Devs should not be held responsible for like the usage of code that they write. This would have a terrible chilling effect on our ecosystem, which is like built on code. So this is definitely worthy of our support, and it's been heartening to see the entire ecosystem rally around that. But yeah, to your point, Michelle, yes, the funding goal hasn't been hit yet. Lawyers are expensive. Litigation is ongoing. So more support is needed. So please do your part.
Please contribute. and thank you for that shout out to the EF matching. That's excellent. We're going to link all of those below, both the donation link and of course with the EF matching that makes such a difference as well. So please contribute. And I think it just felt like a really good plug and shout out because we are talking about privacy and we're talking about ZK, and Again, you just said it right? Like it's gonna have chilling effects. The ruling of this will impact all of us, and so whatever we can do to keep this still top of mind is important. But with that, Leo, let's go over to you. Tell us more about what you're excited about, what keeps you bullish as well in terms of what's coming up.
Yeah, I think, probably sounding like a record at this point, but the ZK future of Ethereum, I think it's just extremely exciting, both from the use case and scaling network as well as the tech itself. I think a lot of people work in ZK technology because they're very interested in the tech, but it's also great to see how Ethereum itself and different blockchain projects like Zcash, for example, and other privacy projects have pushed this deep research field into extreme production cases. So for us, for our team, we're extremely excited to be kind of like in the middle of the whole thing and really be able to combine our expertise and compiler security and ZK into directly supporting Ethereum L1 to scale. I think this is for us, great motivation.
Incredible. And y'all are our first time Epoch participants, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I know, like, I think Shutter, y'all have participated before as well. Protocol Guild, of course, y'all are veterans. So just really want to shout out. You're going to see different projects and the order is randomized when you go onto the app and allocate. Make sure that you, obviously I'm biased, but I would say allocate a lot more because even a little bit makes such a big difference when it comes to the matching side from the Octant matching pool. And even a small bit makes a big difference. And I think I really, really especially want to highlight the work that our first-time participants are doing because sometimes we see name familiarity, and that's why we're trying to do as much as we can on the marketing front to make sure we highlight first-time projects in the Epoch, and we know it's going to make a difference. We are just crossing 416 people who've watched the stream, so that's also really exciting. But going over to you, Cheeky, tell us more about Protocol Guild and what you're excited about. I know you touched on a lot of different topics in the first couple of questions that I asked, but if there's anything else you want to highlight, go for it. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think I would ever say this, but I may have run out of things to say specifically about Protocol Guild, and maybe that's okay for the audience. They've heard enough, but I can talk more about things that I'm excited for, which are, let's call it related to Protocol Guild. So I mentioned before that Fusaka is the next upgrade. It's bringing to us PeerDes, and hopefully the core devs are still trying to figure out basically how can we bump mainnet gas to 100 million. It was at 30 million, then there was an upgrade to 36 million, and most recently, all clients have released updates that bump it to 45 million. And the goal is for Saka to bump that to triple digits, so 100 million. The pathway to achieve that is still uncertain. Lots of testing is happening to make sure that can be done in a safe way that doesn't compromise the decentralization. So yes, that is exciting. It's not the thing that's keeping me like super excited right now. The thing that's keeping me super excited right now is the fork after Fusaka called Glamsterdam, because right now is the really juicy part of the planning for that fork, where basically on the weekly all core dev calls, the core devs are coming together to debate like what goes into this fork, right? Basically, what's the headline feature? And so if you follow any kind of core dev Twitter, Ethereum core dev stuff on Twitter, you may have seen your timelines right now. There's like these graphics of like the choices of what your preferred features for the Glamsterdam fork are. And this is really exciting because there's like maybe let's call it 5 different contenders, which can all kind of shape Ethereum in incredible ways. And it's contentious, of course, because we can only choose 2 of those, basically one for the consensus layer, one for the execution layer, and then there will be smaller upgrades, improvements that will be included as well. But like in terms of headline features, like now the juicy discussion is happening about which ones will it be. Lewis, he mentioned some of them, EPBS, Fossil. There's a few other ones. There's some of them have some overlap. They're basically just like implementation trade-offs, but basically if you're interested in Ethereum's core protocol development, but generally it's like too technical for you, now might be actually a kind of a fun time to try to like listen in, because you get to hear more about like how the core devs think about like the future of Ethereum and how these upgrades basically impact Ethereum's users, such as myself and all of you, of course, how to basically maximize the upgrades to increase our scalability, improve UX, and all that good stuff. So yeah, the Glamsterdam planning is really exciting for me right now. But of course, like, don't forget, like that's not the next upgrade. First Fusaka at, fingers crossed, end of the year, and then after that Glamsterdam. So yeah, it's exciting times for Ethereum's core protocol development. And I think if you are not technical, probably the best two people to follow on this right now on Twitter is Christine Kim. She has she has been covering Ethereum's core protocol development for years already. She most recently is now working independently, so she definitely deserves our support. I think most of the core devs probably read her summaries about these calls as well, just because they can be quite dense sometimes, and it's great to have a recap. But then also Nixo, who was working at eStaker, now works for the Ethereum Foundation. She also does amazing summaries, and I think her most recent tweet is about like how exciting the Glamsterdam planning is. So those are two great follows if you want to like dip your toes more in the Ethereum core protocol development side of things, because yeah, there are definitely exciting things going on, and like all of these upgrades are for like you, the people, right? So you have a voice as well. You don't need to be a core dev to shape this process, but obviously it is the core dev's, let's call it, job to execute this. So if you have a strong opinion on what should be happening, now is the time to get involved and let your voice be heard. Yeah, so that's what I'm super excited about right now.
I think we're all really excited by that too. I'm seeing some really bullish replies here. ZK will eat everything, encrypt everything. Most ZK bullish session, and forecast.org from Mario Havel. Thank you, folks, for sharing that. And we're going to share the Twitter links for both Christine and for Nixo as a reply to this live stream, so anyone can join in. We probably need to collab behind the scenes and figure out how we can bring one of these live streams to talking about the different Glamsterdam forks on the Octant side. I know our community is super interested, but we try to make things as accessible as possible. So I think that's going to be a good one to probably do. But with that, again, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Cheeky, Leo, and Lewis for sharing all of your plans, what you're excited about, everything that's coming up, and your thoughts. Best of luck with the Epoch and the allocation window. The rankings and everything will keep changing. I know we've seen them change up until the last minute, but on behalf of the Octant community, just want to thank you all for the work that you do and that your teams do. I think you all are the unsung heroes of what keeps the Ethereum space going. And a lot of, I think, especially from the technical side, I think there's so much more that often gets underappreciated, but we experience the benefits of. So again, thank you so much for your advocacy and all of the work, and best of luck with the Epoch. We are rooting for you all, and we're going to be trying to get our community to obviously support everybody. But yeah, just want to wish you all best of luck, and hope this Epoch goes well.
Yeah, I also want to say, like, thank you real quick. Like, the Octant community is now at this point one of our largest donors, and like definitely our most consistent donor over time. And that is incredibly heartwarming to see. So thank you to the community for continuously showing your support for Ethereum's core protocol development. We have been like the top recipient all time. There are other amazing projects, so like, definitely don't feel guilty about allocating funds to other projects. There are many really deserving projects in addition to Protocol Guild. But it's an amazing thing that Octant has built. We at Protocol Guild, we know a lot of the people behind Octant very well on a personal level, and these are amazing people. So it's so beautiful to see like these amazing people working in the background, working with this amazing community to basically fund public goods and fund things like Ethereum's core protocol development. It's really meaningful. It's something that does not happen everywhere. It's very unique to Ethereum. And so, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Always a pleasure to be invited on these kind of things and help spread the word. Thank you.
+1 from my side. Thank you so much. Very awesome community.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, and thanks for having our team in the Epoch for the first time as well.
Thanks so much, guys. And thank you for that shout out, Cheeky. That means a lot. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day, evening, or night, wherever you are. And we're going to see you on the next live stream. Have a good one till then.
Thank you. Bye.